The winner of this vote was decided by a fair and open election. This was a fair election. Unfortunately, Carrots refused to concede and demanded a recount, and we're still fighting with Carrots. And I will tell you, we've come to a conclusion. Carrots, I'm sorry to tell you, the result did not change. It's too bad for Carrots.
Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Monday, November 23rd, 2020. Welcome to day 1404. A federal judge dismissed a lawsuit brought by Trump's campaign seeking to block the certification of Pennsylvania's election results. Judge Matthew Brann wrote that Trump's campaign, which had asked him to disenfranchise nearly 7 million voters, should have come to court, quote, armed with compelling legal arguments and factual proof of rampant corruption, end quote, in its efforts to essentially nullify the results. The Trump campaign had claimed that there were widespread improprieties with mail-in ballots in the state. In his 37-page ruling, Judge Brann said he expected a compelling legal argument, quote, and factual proof of rampant corruption, end quote, from the Trump campaign, but instead, quote, this court has been presented with strained legal arguments without merit and speculative accusations, end quote, that were unsupported by evidence. Brann added, quote, this claim, like Frankenstein's monster, has been haphazardly stitched together, end quote. Meanwhile, a group of Republican national security experts demanded that Trump concede the election and begin the transition to the incoming Biden administration. The statement's signers, including former Homeland Security Secretary Tom Ridge, urged Republican leaders to strongly oppose Trump's, quote, dangerous and extra-legal efforts to threaten and intimidate state officials in order to prevent a vote by the Electoral College, end quote, adding that Trump's, quote, refusal to permit the presidential transition poses significant risks to our national security, end quote. Additionally, more than 160 top American executives asked the Trump administration to acknowledge Biden as the president-elect and begin the transition, writing that, quote, every day that an orderly presidential transition process is delayed, our democracy grows weaker in the eyes of our own citizens, and the nation's stature on the global stage is diminished, end quote. Some of the executives who signed on to the letter have also discussed withholding campaign donations from the 2 Republican Senate candidates in Georgia until party leaders push for a presidential transition. In the meantime, Biden named a number of high-level administration and cabinet positions for his foreign policy and national security team, tapping Linda Thomas Greenfield as the ambassador to the United Nations, Alejandro Mayorkas as Homeland Security Secretary, and Avril Haines as Director of National Intelligence. Mayorkas would be the first Latino to run the department that is responsible for managing the nation's immigration policies. Haines would be the highest-ranking woman to serve in the intelligence community. Biden also named his longtime advisor Antony Blinken as Secretary of State, John Kerry as his climate czar, and Jake Sullivan as his national security advisor. Biden also said he plans to nominate Janet Yellen as Treasury Secretary. Moving on, a third COVID-19 vaccine is reportedly highly effective. Drug manufacturer AstraZeneca said the results of an interim analysis show that its vaccine could be up to 90% effective in preventing the disease. Unlike the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, the AstraZeneca vaccine doesn't have to be stored at freezing temperatures, making it potentially easier to distribute. Meanwhile, Donald Trump Jr. tested positive for the coronavirus. A spokesperson said Trump Jr. tested positive at the start of last week and has been, quote, quarantining out at his cabin since the result, end quote. Trump Jr. is the first of Trump's adult children to test positive, although Trump Jr.'s girlfriend Kimberly Guilfoyle tested positive in July, and Trump's youngest child, Barron Trump, tested positive in October. Trump himself tested positive for COVID-19 on October 1st and was hospitalized at Walter Reed Medical Center one day later. Trump Jr.'s announcement came hours after Rudy Giuliani's son, Andrew Giuliani, a special assistant to the president, announced that he had tested positive. 2 Republican senators, Rick Scott and Chuck Grassley of Iowa, also said that they tested positive. The White House, however, still plans to host partially indoor holiday parties despite warnings from health experts and a surge in COVID-19 cases. The U.S. Surgeon General warned that Americans, including the White House, should follow the CDC guidelines and avoid large gatherings during what he called a dire point in the pandemic. Dr. Anthony Fauci called the September Rose Garden event a superspreader event. And finally, Trump skipped the G20 summit's Pandemic Preparedness and Response event to play golf. Trump briefly participated in the virtual summit from the Situation Room, tweeting throughout the opening session about his efforts to overturn the results of the presidential election. He then departed the White House for the Trump National Golf Club in Sterling, Virginia. The U.S., meanwhile, recorded 195,500 new COVID-19 infections, another record.
That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditas.